Well, what to do financially if a spouse dies unexpectedly? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Once you get to the website, go to the top of the page and you'll see a link for Ask Prudent Money. Just click through that link and we'll get you taken care of. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, tomorrow I want to make sure that you are aware of a program that I'm going to be doing called How to Survive Christmas Inflation. And I do this once a year in some form or fashion. Mainly it's because I want to get you ready for Christmas. I want you to get thinking about it now. I know the tendency is to kind of, get to it when you can get to it amongst everything else that you've got going on. And it seems like then you get so busy, stressed, trying to figure out how you're going to pay for it. And typically, if you don't do any planning at all, it ends up coming on the January bills as debt because you just can't pay for it. And we've talked about many times, anytime we use the credit cards for anything, we're talking high interest rates. We want to avoid that at all costs. So every Christmas, I do one of these programs. I usually do it in November, and it gives you plenty of time to really put some thought to what you want to do. I'll also be talking about some of the statistics that could suggest that we've got some inflation concerns to worry about a little bit, to look out for. So we'll be talking about all that tomorrow. And if you ever miss a program, I do podcast every one of these programs, and you can go to prudentmoney.com or you can go to any of the podcast platforms that you like to use to get your podcasts, and you'll find us there. So just go check that out at either prudentmoney.com or wherever you'd like to go to get your podcast. Now, today, I'm taking a little bit more of a serious note. In fact, probably not your first choice of topics that I would choose to do here on Monday afternoon. But I think it's just extremely important. Unfortunately, this year, and it kind of comes and goes, but this year I've experienced a great deal of death. I don't know if you have years like that where many friends pass away, many clients pass away, and you're there to whatever role that you play in their lives. Maybe it's just to be there as a friend for a spouse, surviving spouse. Maybe it's in my case, a financial advisor. Whatever the situation is, this is planning that just isn't always done. And I want to make sure I got this idea from a article that I saw in the Wall Street Journal, and it talked a lot about this, about what do you do if your spouse unexpectedly dies and you are now stuck with everything and you got to figure it all out. I think one of the biggest injustices we can do to our family members, to our spouse, is if we did pass away, and that could be the husband or the wife. It just depends on who takes care of the finances. But if we did pass away, where would everything be to where the spouse could find it? And think about this for just a second. You are there's roughly three outcomes that your that the surviving spouse has to deal with. First of all, got to deal with the potential of running out of money because they don't know what a lot of cases, and I'll talk about this in a second. A lot of cases, they don't really surviving spouse doesn't know what the her or his spouse just left, what kind of financial situation they left them in. And it's at that point that they wish they would have gone to a few meetings, but it just didn't happen. So they're facing the fear until while it's still an unknown. Are they going to run out of money? The second thing is, are they going to become a burden on their family? The second fear. And I'm not really sure. It just depends on whatever survey that you look at where these fears, where they actually rank. But I would think that running out of money, becoming a burden on your family, and death. Think about all that your spouse is facing, and just a little bit of planning would have gone a long way. But that's what we're going to talk about today, and I want to encourage you to go back, re-listen to this if you need to, take some notes if you're not able to right now, and also send it to your spouse. Podcast, like I said, you can get it at any major podcasting platform, and you can send it to your spouse and say, "Hey, would really like to make sure that we are taking care of this and getting it done." There's a lot of well, it's been my experience. There's a lot of moving parts. There is a lot of relationships that may be on the mend, may need to be on the mend. There's so many things going on at once in a situation like this, and we have the opportunity to remove the financial piece out of the way and say, you know what? At least I know if one of us, if I died first or you died first, the other surviving spouse would be okay financially. But you got to know that, and you got to have the information. There's two different ways, two situations you can face when it comes to death. There's unexpectedly, which is the worst because you never had that chance to say goodbye. I mean, there's all the emotional aspects, all the human aspects of it. And then there's you expect to die. And I know that sounds harsh, but you know what I mean. It's a situation where your life, because maybe you have cancer and it's not getting any better, is looks like the probability is higher than most people of dying sooner than later. And if you're in that situation, you've got the time to make sure that your spouse knows where everything is. You've got the time to put a plan together and make sure that they're taken care of, make sure everything's in place. You've got that time to do that. What I'm talking about is a little bit on the an expected situation of a terminal illness, of what to do, but also most importantly the unexpected, because I'm not sure the percentage. I didn't look it up, but I know that it's high. The percentage of one spouse that takes care of everything and leaves the other spouse, not because they're trying to be malicious, but it just happens. The other spouse stays in the dark and doesn't understand what's going on with the bills, with the retirement accounts, with the life insurance, whatever you might have done. But if you're unexpectedly, you are out of time versus having time with being expected. But this is a complicated discussion. So think about it this way. There could be resistance, there could be a lot of things. Like I said, once again, this is a subject with a lot of moving parts. And I hope that if you haven't taken care of this or asked the questions, is it taken care of? That, and you might, if your spouse says, yeah, you got all that taken care of, all that lined up, could you walk me through it? Show each other a lot of grace. Make sure that you pray together about the process and discuss everything as God sits at the table with you, and make sure that everybody's at peace with every aspect of this estate plan. Really, is what you call it. In the 30 some odd years that I've worked with clients, I've seen a lot of different situations, and as I said, I call them moving parts. For instance, adult kids not being in the know. Parents, for whatever reason, will not share with them what they've done, where things are located. And I've had situations where you have the kids going through files, going through every piece of the house, trying to find deeds to the house, trying to find important paperwork, trying to find something that says they bought life insurance or they didn't buy life insurance. I mean, it is a stressful time, much less the fact that they're dealing with the loss or maybe probably the second loss of a parent, and they're trying to make sure that there is enough money to pay for certain items, pay for funeral expenses, pay for you name it. So that's the first moving part that you see. And also, if you're an adult child and you're frustrated with your parents that they won't share with you, and just remember they've got a lot of reasons why they won't do it, why they don't want to talk to it, whether they're valid or they're not valid. The reasons belong to them. And just once again, show grace and pray about it. And if the right time comes up, then you'll find out. Hopefully, though, it's a situation where you will. I've seen a lot of situations where the parent will resist at first, then they'll come across and they'll say, well, let me tell you where everything is. And typically, that's the second parent after the first one passes on. But this is a complicated discussion and it needs to be treated with that kind of respect. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. I'm up against a break. Stick around and I'll be right back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. If you do have a question for me, I want to invite you to go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. And if you stuck through the first part of this, you know we're not talking about a cheery subject by any stretch, but we're talking about a necessary subject to make sure you are not one of the statistics. We're talking about what do you do if a spouse passes away unexpectedly. And we've started talking about through some of the moving parts, the adult kids not being in the know, the parents won't share anything, a surviving spouse not being in the know. And that, like we were talking about earlier, that's something I see all of the time. And it just, for whatever reason, once again, you can get frustrated with your spouse as much as possible because they don't want to sit in on a meeting or they don't want to be in the know. At least you can put everything together and have the necessary documents and people in place to help your spouse in the event something happened to you. And we'll talk about that. And then, of course, another big problem, moving part is, not everybody understands how money works. It stresses people out. And I have a client that lost her husband this year, and she will tell me, this talking about money stresses me out. And she's come such a long way as far as healing that fear and facing very courageously what the situation is. One spouse has always designated this to be his or her part of the relationship, and he just takes care of everything. We kind of talked about that. The spouse doesn't care for the financial advisor. And this is a particularly interesting situation to be in, and it's something that you want to address ahead up front. Maybe you need to go and even though you like this financial advisor, try to figure out what it is about the advisor that your spouse doesn't like, and maybe that's something that you're not seeing. But you got to remember, if something happens to you, that spouse, just think the surviving spouse has to deal with that financial advisor. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This is probably what I will call the nuclear option, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Adult kids with small children, and they don't have their children in with trust wills. They don't have the kids taken care of if something happens to them. That's why I call it the nuclear option. It's the worst case scenario. Both the husband and the wife, both parents pass at the same time and leave those kids without the proper legal documents to protect them. And that is just the most important thing that you can do. And, especially in buying life insurance, which is something young couples will end up needing to do, it's just so very inexpensive to purchase and to use to take care of your kids. But here's what you need to know and what order you need to do it in. Inventory of assets. This is probably the most important thing. And if you just get this done, you've probably beat so many other high percentage of people who haven't done anything. But you need to put this on paper and put the paper in a very secure place, and or you also need to put it online. So what that means is put an inventory together that shows their account number, what type of an account it is, and have a password vault that you give the login to somebody, and make sure that it doesn't lock you out because of someone can't be there to verify the information. That's always kind of a problem when that happens. But make sure that you have all of that information to where they can go from account to account and look to see what is there, and then all the login information, all the addresses, the phone numbers, the account numbers, everything with the current balances, which is something that you'll update every year. Very important to do that, to update it every 12/31 at the end of the year what the balance is. Let's see. Account numbers on paper, like I said, statements, anything, just make sure it's really organized and put together. Now, ideally, you'll have a financial advisor that is working and that's going through that, because you really need to have two people. You need to have a family friend that you trust that will kind of overlook the process and will be there by your spouse's side to make sure that you're carrying out his or her wishes. And then the financial advisor who is there to explain things and hopefully put most of this together. And you also want on that inventory of assets, life policies with the phone numbers, with the beneficiary designation, and annuity policies with the same type of information, both paper and online. Any debt that you have, any income producing investments that you have, any pensions that are currently paying or will be paying as a result of the death. When I say currently paying, will you still get that same amount, or will it be cut in half, or will it go away? It just depends on how things are set up. Now, I want to point something out as we get towards the end of all of this, and three different things I want to point out because I think they're very important. The first one is you need to be aware that statistics show that the financial advisor that starts out with your surviving spouse is not the one that works with them long term. I've seen the highest that I've come across statistics, 70 to 80% of those of widows change financial advisors. And that could be for a number of dynamics, but you cure that by at least having your spouse go to the review meetings and going to and being in on phone conferences and Zoom meetings and getting to know the advisor. I would think that would help quite a bit, but you got to know that is a dynamic. And can that be problematic? I think as long as you've got a family friend or a member of your family that is designated as this person kind of deals with the financial advisor and goes as an intermediary between the two, and make sure that your spouse is taken care of. The nuclear situation, number two, which is what I talked about earlier, is when the husband and the wife, the mom and the dad, pass away at the same time, and the kids are left with no parents. And this is where you really want to get a trust set up. And I'm not an attorney, nor am I trying to play one on the radio. I, I, I would recommend, though, if it were me and I did this with young kids, is to have a trust. Then the trust dictates everything for the kids. Dictates where they go, uh, the when the money is given out, what the money can be used for. Has a trustee, which is typically that family friend or that important person in your life that you want to oversee it. And you could also put in your advisor in there. Have two people check checks and balances, but you want to make sure that every aspect of those kids are taken care of. That they're going to school, that they know when they can get a car, how much they can spend on that car, what does college look like? Because think about it, they could be getting $2 or $3 million. That when you start adding up assets of a home and you start adding up life insurance and everything, it gets expensive. And you want to make sure that they're just not being handed over a bunch of money. Of course, there's other laws that protect against that too, but the trust is a great way to go. And it's really, the toughest thing to do with a trust is to pick out the people that you want to take care of all of this and take care of your kids and guardians for your kids. So you may have a lot of different people that are assigned to taking care of your kids. Obviously, you want to ask people before you put them in the document that's okay. But that's the second thing. The number three thing is to, if you are getting all this organized, put all this together for your spouse, that you build a plan for them as if something happened to you today, and then you update that plan just for your spouse every 12 months, and make sure that the plan is working like that you thought it would. Make sure that in fact, the best situation would be is if you could bring your spouse to this meeting with your financial advisor that's going over this plan and making sure that everything is in place and everything is good. There's two plans going on there. There's one is what if something happens to me or my spouse, and the second one is what our plan together for retirement. And so make sure that you have all of that squared away, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and everything in place like you need it. And then have everything in one place, and someone knows where that preferably is, in a safe or a locking, something with a locking mechanism to it, or something heavily guarded on your computer system at home there, and make sure that you have everything where it needs to be. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you want to listen to this again, you can go to any podcasting platform. It is a good way to get information. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you've got a question for me, please go to the website, www.prudentmoney.com, and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.